Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Anita Knutson. Anita Knutson, 18, had just finished her first year at Minot State University. She is intelligent, hardworking, and well-liked. She majored in education and aims to become a kindergarten teacher. Her family and friends believed this profession suited her perfectly because she loved working with young children. She often cared for the neighbors' kids. Anita shared an apartment near the university with a childhood friend. To help cover her tuition and living expenses without burdening her parents, she took on 2 jobs, one in retail and another at a local hotel. Despite her busy schedule, she maintains an active lifestyle and has many friends. In 2007, Anita was eagerly anticipating the summer break. She missed her home and family very much, although she regularly calls her parents and keeps in touch with her siblings. When her mother called on Saturday, June 3, she did not respond. She had a shift at the hotel that day, so her mother thought she might be busy or simply missed the call. However, on Sunday, not being able to contact Anita caused concern, especially since she did not show up for work. Worried, her father, Gordon, decided to travel to Maine to check on her. As Gordon approached the building where Anita lived, he noticed that the window of her room, located to the right of the front entrance, was broken. Getting closer, he saw a hunched figure of a girl sitting on the bed. Although her face was not visible from the window, but he recognized it was his daughter. He called her name, but when she didn't respond, he reached through the window to touch her. To his horror, he realized she was dead. Her body was cold. In a panic, he contacts the homeowner, Laura Knapp, and waits for her to unlock the door. Once inside the room, it is clearly too late to save Anita. The police were called to the scene and determined that Anita had been stabbed twice, once in the chest and once from the side. There were no other signs of injury or struggle. It was unclear whether she had been wearing a robe or if it had been thrown over her after she collapsed onto the bed following the attack. During the investigation, important evidence was found at the crime scene, including Anita's mobile phone and a folding knife covered in dried blood, which was discovered under the blankets on the bed beside the wall. Notably, several of Anita's valuables, such as cash, her laptop, and digital camera, remained untouched. Shows that theft was not the motive for the attack. Investigators concluded that the window was not the entry point for the killer. Even though the window was left open and was wide enough for an adult to crawl through, a maintenance worker named Marty Annell found a window screen on the ground outside the previous night. The screen had been cut into the shape of a capital L. Marty had picked it up with a knife, intending to fix or replace it, but had forgotten about it until Gordon arrived the next day to check on his daughter. Marty later gave the cut screen to the police. Despite the damaged screen, investigators were not convinced there had been a break-in through the window. No evidence of entry was found, and the dusty windowsills, both inside and outside, were undisturbed. This suggests that mesh panel was cut after the murder, indicating the killer likely did not use the window to enter. It appeared the crime scene was staged, and the murderer probably used the door. When Gordon entered the apartment, he found the front door locked, which required a key to open and close. There were 4 individuals to have keys to the front door. One belonged to Anita, another was her roommate, Nichole Rice, who was away visiting parents for the weekend. The third belonged to the landlady, Laura Knapp, and the 4th person is the maintenance worker, Marty. Marty caught investigators off guard because he was the one who discovered the window grill. He claimed he did not see Anita on the bed next to the window when he picked up the screen from outside. However, Gordon said that as he approached the building, he could clearly see Anita through the window. Initial DNA tests on items such as a pocket knife and other areas of the room yielded no clues, suggesting that investigators would need to look for the killer using other methods. They began looking into Anita's personal life and eventually concluded that she had been murdered. Cell phone records and forensic analysis revealed that Anita was texting a friend, Michael Van, early on Sunday morning, more than a day before her body was found. The text indicated that Michael, who had a romantic interest in her, sent a message asking her to reply to his previous message. However, Anita replied that she didn't know what to say. Their exchange was personal, but not flirtatious. The last text from him arrived on Anita's phone at 4:53. It turned out that Michael wanted more than just friendship, but friends stated that the two only communicated platonically. Michael isn't the only one who wants to date Anita. Tyler Schmaltz, a college student, he is shy and awkward, also has feelings for her. He admitted to having few friends, and Anita was one of the few who showed him kindness. They attended prom together in high school, but their relationship never turned romantic. Tyler admitted during a police interview that although he had long liked Anita, that did not stop him from being close friends with her. In fact, he even moved to the same apartment complex to be nearer to her. After the crime, Anita's family found Tyler's behavior unusual. He lingered in the cordoned-off area for an extended period, frequently reaching out to the police for updates. He even created a 20-minute video in memory of Anita and shared it online. Additionally, he organized and took part in fundraisers to cover advertising costs for information related to the investigation. He was questioned multiple times by detectives, and his DNA and fingerprints were collected and compared to those found at the crime scene, but there were no matches. Shortly after Anita was found, a witness reported seeing a man running away from the crime scene around the time of her murder. The police shared a description of this man and attempted to locate him. A local resident came forward, stating that he regularly jogged along that route at the same time. However, this lead was eventually set aside. Meanwhile, a construction crew working in the adjacent building had a clear view of Anita's apartment complex. DNA samples were collected from all the workers, and none matched the evidence. Investigators interviewed people close to Anita, including her close friend and roommate, Nichole Rice. The two had been friends since high school and were very close at the time. Nichole insists their friendship is still good and disagreements between them were only minor. In contrast, those who knew Anita described their relationship differently, suggesting that they argued frequently. Anita's father, Gordon, revealed that he had installed a lock on her bedroom door just a month before her death because she was worried about her safety at home. Many speculated that Nichole felt jealous of the attention Anita received, not only from their mutual friends, but also from the boys who were interested in her. Anita was uncomfortable with Nichole frequently inviting men over to their apartment and leaving them alone in her room for a day or two. Anita's friends were aware that Nichole sometimes had heated arguments with these men that turned into insults. Additionally, text messages from Nichole indicated that she was misrepresenting their relationship. In one message, Nichole stating that she was almost never at home and that she had everything in place. The police reported that over 4 people were interviewed and several DNA samples were collected from Anita's nails, the window, and the knife. At that time, these samples did not match any known individuals, but were preserved for future analysis. The investigation has not identified a prime suspect and has ruled out several individuals. For instance, Tyler was cleared from the suspect list. Although his behavior was deemed peculiar and his feelings for Anita could be seen as obsessive, there is no evidence that he was involved in the crime. Detectives concluded that this was not a case involving emotions. They also believe that the perpetrator did not enter through the window. Whoever the perpetrator was, they had a key to the apartment and could have locked the door when they left. Tyler appeared genuinely eager to assist in the investigation and find the murderer. He had no motive to harm Anita and willingly participated in interviews with both the police and the media following her death. He admitted to being in love with her, though she did not feel the same. they were merely good friends. Marty, the building maintenance worker, was also questioned multiple times, and information about him was gathered. This continued until January 2009, when Marty was found dead in his apartment. There has been much speculation over the years about Marty's involvement in the murder. His sudden death further increased suspicions that he could not bear his guilt. Anita's case remains unsolved, and for nearly 15 years, there have been no new leads. Tyler was not the only one seeking answers. Anita's family also gave interviews and shared any information, even small details, that might help resolve the case. Anita's brother Daniel, who was very close to her, died in April 2013 from emotional pain after her passing. The family believes that the death of his younger sister and his longing for her led to his severe and prolonged depression. Anna, the youngest sibling, said that Anita's passing had a serious impact on Daniel, making his life no longer the same. As a result, the family endured the loss of 2 children. In the fall of 2021, the investigation got a new lead when the American crime show Cold Justice took over Anita's case. Cold Justice is known for revisiting unsolved cases, which often leads to the arrest of suspects and obtaining confessions from them. The show's team traveled to Minot, North Dakota, to search for people who knew Anita. The Cold Justice team identified 4 main suspects in the case: Tyler, who they quickly re-interviewed and dismissed as a suspect; Michael, who had been attempting to date Anita and was the last person to communicate with her; Marty; and Nichole. Detective Maynata and the investigative team found no evidence of a conflict between Anita and Michael, leading them to eliminate him as a suspect. They also believe Marty's claim that he could not see Anita from the outside window is true. Police reports indicated that when they arrived, the lights in Anita's bedroom were off before sunset, making Marty unable to see her at that time. With Marty no longer a suspect, attention turned to Nichole. In 2021, she was arrested at the Maine Air Force Base, where she worked, and charged with the murder of Anita. The sheriff of Maine testified in court that after 15 years of investigation and following various leads, they had finally taken the suspect into custody. Nichole was taken to the Ward County Jail. 2 lead detectives were assigned to Anita's case and had been investigating it for the past few years. Thanks to Cold Justice's assistance, the case has made new progress and now has an arrest warrant for Nichole. Nichole was released on $125,000 bail and is currently awaiting trial. She has the support of her husband, who has encouraged her to drop the charges. However, authorities presented strong evidence suggesting her involvement in the murder. As the investigation begins, it becomes clear that Nichole is the only person in Anita's life with whom she has conflict. Text messages between them revealed increasing hostility. Friends noted that while Anita and Nichole were very close in their youth, their relationship had soured after moving in together. Witnesses recalled arguments involving alarm clocks and fish tanks, saying Nichole had called Anita derogatory names over the years. Nichole initially avoided arrest due to her alibi. Her parents claimed she had spent the entire weekend of June 2 to 4 on their farm, which coincided with the time of Anita's death. However, a witness reported seeing Nichole at a bar about 45 minutes away from town on June 2, 2007. Nichole later told that she had returned to her apartment to get some clothes. During a preliminary hearing in late 2022, Detective Talbot presented statements from people who knew Nichole and Anita at the time of Anita's death. He pointed out inconsistencies in Nichole's testimony, which led to her being retried and questioned as a suspect. A shocking detail was revealed by Nichole's ex-boyfriend. He recalled that at a party after Anita's death, friends of both confronted Nichole and asked her about what had happened. In a drunken state, Nichole laughed and claimed she was guilty in front of everyone. In 2008, 9 statements were submitted regarding the confession Nichole made at that party. Her boyfriend also reported to the police about the incident that transpired there. However, efforts to have Nichole repeat her confession while sober were unsuccessful. Ultimately, the judge concluded that there was sufficient evidence to charge Nichole when the case goes to trial, expected to occur in mid to late 2023. Nichole's attorney, Philip Becker, was expected to point the finger at a new suspect named Devon Hall, who had been arrested for breaking into homes. Officer Anita, who arrested Devon Hall, noted in his report that Devon claimed he had been to many houses in the area. Philip also pointed to a statement from a witness who saw a man running from the area around the time of Anita's murder, claiming the description matched Devon. The defense insisted that it was Devon who broke into the apartment and killed Anita. However, a number of reports from previous investigators and even FBI analysts supported the theory that Devon was not involved. Investigators ruled out Devon as a suspect after receiving video evidence of him being at the railway station in Minot on the evening of Anita's murder. Therefore, the person seen running away could not have been him. It is likely that the defense will try to find new arguments, especially since opinions about Anita's death differ. The prosecutor's office believes that Anita died early in the morning of June 3, shortly after sending her last SMS. If Devon was the killer, then Anita must have died much later, after he had already arrived by train on the evening of June 3. Based on the information released in this investigation, the case against Nichole remains unclear. No trial date has been set at this time. If Nichole Rice is convicted, she faces a sentence of life in prison without parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Maria Luisa Cedeno. On July 18, 2020, Maria Luisa Cedeno arrived at the Lamb Mission Inn Hotel in Manuel Antonio, in the Costa Rican province of Puntarenas. She was traveling with her little dog named Mafalda, it she treated like a daughter. The first day passed without incident. Maria Luisa went to the beach, had lunch at a restaurant, and drank some alcohol, activities common for tourists. However, the following day, everything changed. At 4:30 p.m. sharp, Maria requested that a bottle of wine, mineral water, and 2 glasses be brought to her room. It's worth noting that she didn't mention being with anyone, and everyone around her was convinced that she wanted to rest alone. Throughout the entire afternoon and night, no movement was recorded in her room. On July 20th, the hotel staff tried to contact her, but they received no response. A staff member had previously spoken with Maria, who mentioned that she lived alone because she had recently separated from her boyfriend, was not feeling well, and was only traveling with her small dog, Mafalda. Since several months had passed since the official start of the pandemic, Maria said that this had also affected her mental health, which was deteriorating. Considering everything she had been through, she said she needed a vacation. Therefore, the hotel staff decided to enter the room to check regularly in case of any unforeseen circumstances. The front door was locked from the inside, so they looked for another way in and checked the door leading to the patio. This room had an emergency exit for guests with pets. They had previously opened the patio door so the dog could go outside. When the staff approached this exit, they found the door half open. Upon entering, they were hit by a terrible odor and saw blood stains throughout the room. The dog was alive, trembling in a corner and avoiding the staff, likely due to trauma or fear. The lifeless body of Maria was found lying motionless on the bed, wrapped in a sheet. Maria Luisa Cedeno was a highly respected anesthesiologist. At 43, she led the Department of Anesthesiology and Rehabilitation at Cima Hospital in Escazú. Her colleagues admired her greatly, and during the early pandemic, she was notably committed to helping patients in need. As a medical professional, she provided significant support to her loved ones, arranging health insurance, assisting with medical appointments. Maria's parents lived in San Carlos, which made it difficult for her to be with her family all the time. Friends described her as a strong, intelligent, and likable woman who loved traveling both within Costa Rica and internationally. Her reputation was impeccable. The news of Maria's death was a tremendous shock to her family and Costa Rica. People were left asking, who would want to harm someone like Maria? From the moment the hotel staff discovered the lifeless Maria body, the mysteries of this case began. The crime scene is confusing, not only because of the brutality Maria endured, but also because of the mysteries that arise as soon as they enter the hotel room she rented. Like most hotels worldwide, this hotel keeps a record of the magnetic keys used for the rooms. This means that each time a room is accessed, the card used is recorded, and the key's code is identified. This system allows they to determine whether the person accessing the room was a guest or a hotel employee. In Maria's murder, there was no record of any other keys being used other than hers. Maria had entered her room alone the previous night, with no one else entering through the main door. However, the room had a sliding glass door at the back that could be used as an alternative entry point. Since this door could only be locked from the inside, it is possible that Maria left the door unlocked, either intentionally letting someone in or accidentally leaving the door open. This allowed someone to enter and commit the murder. As the door didn't have an electronic lock system, there was no record of anyone entering or exiting through it. This was considered the most logical explanation at the time. After discovering Maria's body, hotel staff immediately contacted the police. Upon examining the scene, it was clear that she had been brutally murdered. Her body showed severe damage, indicating that she had been tortured by someone who was extremely enraged. Forensic experts collected evidence and analyzed every detail to determine the cause of death and identify the perpetrator. The authorities recommended a closed casket at the funeral due to the extreme level of brutality inflicted upon Maria. An autopsy was later performed, which showed that the body had multiple bite marks and 2 broken fingernails, indicating that Maria attempted to defend herself. The autopsy also revealed that the killer cleaned the she-body after the murder. According to the investigator, Maria was killed in the bedroom, as evidenced by the large amount of blood found on the bed. The killer then moved the body to the bathroom, washed and dried it, wrapped it in a sheet, and placed it back on the bed. Although the killer attempted to wash the Maria body to eliminate evidence, this proved nearly impossible due to the extensive presence of blood throughout the room. Blood stains were found on the floor, walls, curtains, and bed, indicating the brutality of the attack. The forensic experts took photographs and collected as much physical evidence as possible from the scene. The body was then sent for an autopsy, and the police started interviewing the hotel staff and guests who may have witnessed or heard something. Given the state of the crime scene, it is likely that Maria screamed violently and her dog barked loudly during the attack. However, no one reported hearing any screams throughout the night. The hotel was relatively empty, but there were still a few people working at the hotel, and the hotel owner, Harry Bowden, who lived there with his husband Dano, were also present there. Additionally, Harry had allowed some acquaintances to stay at the hotel due to their financial difficulties. A bottle of wine and 2 glasses were found in Maria's hotel room. The wine had been ordered from room service. Later, investigators examined Maria's cell phone and found that she had sent a photo of the 2 glasses to a friend. However, the message did not indicate that she was with someone or she was waiting for someone to come to her room. She also sent an audio message to the same friend describing the hotel's all-inclusive package and its benefits. Maria seemed pleased with the service, mentioning that staff would bring her drinks, fruit, and other treats. She also mentioned interacting with hotel staff, including the bartender and hotelier's assistant, and noted that the owner was Dutch. Although she acknowledged the hotel is a bit worn out and understaffed, she expressed her overall satisfaction with her stay. The room cost 155,000 colons per night. Authorities investigating Maria's murder spoke with her friends and relatives to identify suspect. They discovered that she often ordered 2 glasses, even when alone, to have one for alcohol and one for water. This suggested she wasn't waiting for anyone at the time of the attack. The investigation revisited the initial theory: the attacker must have been someone who saw Maria in the hotel, noticed the back door was open and attacked her. However, the extreme brutality of the crime suggests that the killer had deep hatred and anger towards the victim, and often the killer knew the victim. Even so, there is no evidence that Maria was with anyone or had enemies at the time of her death. The autopsy revealed additional details about Maria's death, including signs of strangulation, blows to her face, arms, and chest, and evidence of abuse. After analyzing the autopsy results, conducting interviews with family, friends, and hotel staff, authorities concluded that the attack was likely carried out by multiple individuals. This theory was based on the fact that there were no reports of Maria screaming during the attack. Authorities believed that at least 2 attackers were involved, and they took complete control of Maria. Some investigators even suggested that a 3rd person may have been involved, as the victim showed signs of abuse. According to this theory, 2 assailants held Maria Luisa down and a 3rd raped her. All of this is evidenced by the fact that when her body was analyzed, there was no sign of rope or anything to indicate that she was tied up. Police speculated that the men may have stuffed something into Maria's mouth to stop her from screaming or to prevent her screams from being heard, in order to carry out the attack undetected. The cause of death was determined to be a head injury, which could have occurred in several ways. It might have been caused by a violent blow to the head, by being undressed, as there was evidence of fractured vertebrae, or by being hit with an object or falling heavily to the floor. Overall, what the assailants did to Maria was an atrocity, and without clear motivation. The first suspect was quickly identified because this man, who was staying at the hotel, had numerous fresh wounds resembling scratches and blows, suggesting he had been defending himself. Upon investigation, it was revealed to be Teodoro Herrera Martinez, an exotic dancer working in the city's nightclubs and staying at the hotel at the time of the murder. Teodoro was arrested when authorities were looking for evidence that he was involved in the murder. The man's footprints were compared to those at the crime scene. 2 matching prints were found on the black ceramic tile floor in front of the bed in the bedroom. A short time later, a second suspect named Luis Carlos Miranda was arrested. A hotel security guard had seen him walking in the hallways at night with Teodoro. Because Torreira was already in custody, Luis needed to be questioned to check for any links to the case. Additionally, tests revealed that his dental records matched the bite marks on Maria's body. Hotel employees testified that they saw Maria talking to Luis and, on one occasion, to Teodoro. However, their interactions were casual, like simple greetings, rather than those of acquaintances or friends. This might be because there were very few guests at the hotel, so they may have passed each other many times. Earlier, the hotel owner allowed 2 friends, Luis and Teodoro, to stay on the property due to financial difficulties. The police decided to question the owner of the hotel, Harry Bowden, after finding matching footprints and bite marks from the 2 suspects, Luis and Teodoro. During questioning, Harry revealed that on the night of the murder, July 19, 2020, he and husband were having dinner in their apartment within the hotel with Luis and Teodoro. After dinner, the 4 men went to a private pool. Harry also disclosed that Luis and Teodoro worked for him in exchange for accommodation. Luis managed the website and marketing, while Teodoro worked as a cook and bartender. The hotel owners and Luis and Teodoro were not close friends initially, but after moving into the hotel a year before the murder, they started spending more time together, going out for meals and socializing. And thus, the four men became friends. Although Harry cooperated by giving an interview in August 2020, but he was arrested because bite marks found on Maria's body matched his dental records, which began to reveal the truth. The police confiscated the phones of all the detainees and found text messages between Luis and Harry that turned out to be very compromising. In these messages, Luis invited Harry to have an intimate relationship with a woman he had been following. This exchange happened several days before the incident. However, Luis and Harry claimed that the messages didn't mean anything and that they were just joking, but that, along with the physical evidence, was enough for the authorities to keep them in jail while the case was being put together. The only person not arrested was Harry's husband. Because there was no evidence against him, no text messages, no fingerprints, and the bite marks didn't match those on Maria's body. Luis, Harry, and Teodoro's defense argued that the bite mark evidence was inconclusive and that none of them were involved in the murder. Despite this, the three men were charged with the murder of Maria. Before the trial, Harry's lawyer requested that he be released and placed under house arrest for two reasons. First, due to Harry being 69 years old, staying in jail was risky. Second, he had difficulty walking due to recent knee surgery. The defense claimed he had been using a cane for a long time, and at the trial's start, he appeared in a wheelchair. Because of this request, he was placed under house arrest and returned to the hotel where he was staying, and he couldn't leave the hotel. On September 13, 2022, the trial of Luis, Harry, and Teodoro began, where evidence against them was presented. The prosecution struggled to prove the involvement of Harry and Luis. They had text messages and bite marks on Maria's body as evidence. However, the bite marks couldn't definitively identify the murderer, they could only exclude suspects. All hotel employees were ruled out as suspects, but not these two, Harry and Luis. In contrast, Teodoro had the most evidence against him. There was a blood trail, and he had wounds inflicted by Maria during her self-defense, as his blood was found under her fingernails. Blood was also found on his shoes, watch, and cell phone, located in his room during the search. Given this evidence, only Teodoro Herrera Martinez was convicted and sentenced to 50 years in prison, while Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda were acquitted due to a lack of physical evidence. Many people believe that Luis and Harry were involved in the murder because the hotel security cameras mysteriously stopped working on the day it happened. This suggests that someone might have planned it. A hotel security guard was also suspected, but he and the other two individuals could not be arrested due to a lack of evidence. Strangely, the guard left for another country after the murder, even though the police asked him to attend the trial as a witness. There are several aspects of this case that suggest more people might be involved. For example, two guests told the police that the hotel experienced a power outage for many hours on the night of the murder, which may have been intentional. This could have been done to disable the security cameras and the magnetic keys. A peculiar detail is that 9 days after the murder, investigators searched Harry's private office, which may have given him enough time to destroy any evidence. They not only analyzed text messages but also looked at Luis and Harry's social media accounts, where they discovered discussions about an idea directly related to how to find Maria's body. Legally, Harry and Luis are presumed innocent. The only person in prison for this murder is Teodoro Herrera Martinez, who is awaiting a new trial to see if his sentence can be reduced. Although the case is solved, but the Maria family suspects something is being hidden. They suspect a defense or cover-up. The family reported that the authorities returned Maria's belongings soaked in blood, which they find puzzling because they wanted to preserve the evidence in case new information emerged. They are satisfied with Teodoro's conviction but not with the acquittal of Harry and Luis. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kendra Hatcher. Kendra Hatcher was born on February 3, 1980, in Springfield, Sangamon County, Illinois, to Reagan Hatcher and Bonnie Gibson Jameson Cawley. Her parents divorced, and her mother remarried Bruce Jamon. Kendra had 3 sisters, Jamie Kalman, Ashley Lipham, and Melissa Jameson, and 1 brother, Neil Hatcher. She grew up in Pleasant Plains and pursued her studies in dentistry there. Following her divorce in 2010, she relocated to Dallas and started working at Smile Zone Dental Studio. Kendra, who had a strong Christian faith, aimed to use her dental skills to help others. The clinic, for instance, offered free services to disadvantaged children. In her free time, Kendra taught Bible studies and took part in volunteer programs, which involved building churches abroad and offering free dental care to children in Ecuador. Her career quickly took off, and her solo life thrived. On May 24, 2015, Kendra started dating Dr. Ricardo Paniagua. They met through a dating app, and from their first date, they became inseparable. Both shared similar values and interests and wanted the same things in life. Ricardo was completing his dermatology residency at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. Despite having been in a relationship for just a few months, he and his girlfriend were already talking about getting married. Unfortunately, a tragic incident in a parking lot claimed her life, ending all their future plans. Investigators who arrived at the massacre site assessed the crime scene and initially suggested a robbery, as Kendra's purse and some valuables were missing. Beside her body, they discovered bullet fragments and a gun magazine. However, evidence from the shooting shifted the focus away from robbery. Kendra was shot twice. 1 bullet hit her back and another struck her head. The entry wound was at the top of her head, exciting through the chin, suggesting that Kendra had her hands raised behind her head when she was shot. The murder theory was confirmed after the police obtaining CCTV footage, which helped reconstruct the events. The footage shows a black Jeep Grand Cherokee entering the parking lot at 7:15 p.m. Half an hour later, Kendra arrives home and parks in the same garage. A few minutes later, a man comes up to her, shoots her, and runs to the side, then jumps into the moving black Jeep. The videos were of poor quality and the crime scene couldn't be seen in them. The attackers couldn't be identified, but the vehicle was put on the wanted list. It was decided to release the images of the Jeep and the driver captured by the cameras to the media. The authorities asked the public for help, and that turned out to be effective. A man named Jose Luis Ortiz got in touch with the police. He reported that the car in the images was his, but made it clear that he wasn't involved in the shooting and wasn't drive. The vehicle. When questioned, Jose explained that on the morning of September 2nd, 2 of his friends, Brenda Delgado and Crystal Cortez, asked him to fix their car and requested to borrow his Jeep until the evening. Jose agreed. He mentioned that later that evening, Brenda called Jose to a restaurant. That same evening, Crystal drove the Jeep come back to Jose's house. Therefore, the man was quite surprised when he saw his Jeep in the news. When Jose saw his Jeep on a TV show, he asked Brenda about it. At first, she said it was a different Jeep on the screen. Then, Brenda mentioned that Crystal had been traveling for work, and she didn't know anything about it. Brenda advised Jose not to tell anyone and just repaint the Jeep. Brenda agreed to pay for the Jeep to be painted. Meanwhile, Jose was waiting for a decision on his U.S. citizenship and wanted to avoid any issues with the police. He understood that Brenda had tricked him, so he went back to the police department to testify. He police monitored all the Jeep's movements that day and identified the 2 young women whom Jose had mentioned. Brenda Delgado was the first person investigators questioned. She claimed she didn't know Kendra and had never seen her before. When asked about her whereabouts on September 2nd at 7:42 p.m., Brenda provided an alibi, stating that she was at a restaurant with Jose and even presented receipts for the dinner. This raised questions about why someone would keep dinner receipts for so long. Eventually, with detailed investigation, the concealed truth behind the crime was uncovered. The central figure in the investigation was Brenda. She was born into a modest family, Luis and Maria Alato, who immigrated to Dallas from Mexico. Her father worked in a factory. They settled in a low-income neighborhood in southeast Dallas, where Luis found a job in construction and Maria worked at the U.S. Post Office and cleaned houses. Brenda was their second child and only daughter. She was an excellent student, well-liked by her teachers, and worked part-time at a flower shop and as a waitress. Brenda was very ambitious and dreamed of attending medical school, but unfortunately, her parents couldn't afford the high tuition fees. After graduating from Skyline High School in 2000, she continued to live with her parents while dreaming of a prosperous and beautiful life. To achieve her goals, Brenda worked diligently. She was employed as a dental assistant and also worked at a department in North Park Center. In 2012, Brenda met Ricardo Paniagua and fell in love with him. Their first date, a dream come true for her, was at a Jennifer Lopez concert. In November 2012, just 3 months after meeting, Brenda moved in with Ricardo at his home in Fitzhugh Urban Flats. Ricardo was equally captivated by Brenda and even made an effort to meet her parents. In 2013, she posted on Facebook for his birthday. Brenda later found out she was pregnant, but at Ricardo's urging, she ended the pregnancy, which left her heartbroken. A bit recovered from the decision, Brenda decided to focus on her career and her beloved Ricardo. In the fall of that year, she started attending Sanford. Initially, it appeared that Brenda had moved past the emotional impact of the breakup, but this wasn't true. Her reliance on Ricardo intensified. When Ricardo shared a photo online with his new partner Kendra, who resembled a model, Brenda might feel jealous. Investigators, after gathering details about Brenda and her life, concluded that she had a motive to remove her rival. Ricardo confirmed that Brenda was his ex-girlfriend. They had an on and off relationship from 2012 to 2015, the relationship ending a few months before Ricardo met Kendra. Ricardo believed that he and Brenda remained friends and didn't see any issues between Brenda and Kendra. After all, he had dated other women before meeting Kendra, so why would meeting her affect Brenda? Brenda believed she had come up with the perfect plan to win back her ex-boyfriend and eliminate Kendra from his life. She started by offering him support and showed interest in his relationship with Kendra. In reality, she was aware of all their future plans, and Ricardo mistakenly thought her interest was genuine. Unfortunately, men often misunderstand women and sometimes trust them blindly. Brenda had been plotting her own plan for months. She had opened Ricardo's mail and knew all his plans with Kendra, even when and where they had booked tickets. All of this was infuriating to Brenda. She wanted to get rid of Kendra Hatcher, sincerely believing that she had taken Kendra's place. Brenda transferred Ricardo's account to her phone to monitor him closely. Following Ricardo and Kendra became her main focus in life. She became obsessed with stalking them, eventually quitting her job to dedicate all her time to this pursuit. Over time, Brenda developed a sinister plan to kill Kendra, whom she despised. To carry out this plan, Brenda approached several acquaintances, offering them money to harm Kendra. A mutual acquaintance introduced her to Crystal Cortez, a 21-year-old single mother facing severe financial difficulties. For just $500, Crystal agreed to help her. Following Brenda's instructions, Crystal contacted Christopher Love, who agreed to carry out the crime. Crystal gave Christopher $500 from Brenda along with 2 types of illegal substances. Kendra was being followed by two women who wanted to learn her habits and daily schedule to choose the best time and place for their crime. On September 2, 2015, they used Jose's car. Crystal and Christopher waited for Kendra in the parking lot. They didn't follow her home from work because they were worried about getting stuck in traffic. That evening, they successfully carried out their plan. A few days after the crime, Crystal and Christopher were arrested. The suspects denied their guilt and being at the crime scene. However, things changed when Christopher was found with the gun that killed Kendra in the side compartment of the car. Crystal, on the other hand, was nervous and constantly confused in her testimony, giving different testimony about why the SUV appeared in various parts of the city. In the initial questioning, Crystal confessed to being the driver in the parking lot. However, she insisted that she was forced there by an armed carjacker who had entered her SUV and made her drive. Trying to appear innocent, she falsely stated that her son was with her in the car. This claim was later disproved as security cameras did not show any child present. During the interrogation, as more evidence emerged, Crystal altered her testimony and sought to negotiate with the investigators. She agreed to testify against Brenda in exchange for a reduced sentence. Crystal informed the police that Brenda wanted Kendra dead and that the crime was Brenda's idea. Crystal stated that within 2 weeks of meeting Brenda, they started planning the crime. The CE found out that Brenda wasn't just sad because her relationship with Ricardo had ended, she was obsessed and desperate to win him back. She pretended to be happy about being his loyal friend, but her life started falling apart. She began to resent Kendra, believing she had taken her place. According to Crystal, it was at this moment that Brenda decided she wanted to get rid of Kendra Hatcher. That's when a plan to commit the perfect crime hatched in Brenda Delgado's mind. During her testimony, Crystal explained how Brenda came up with the perfect crime and enlisted her help. Together, Brenda and Crystal started planning to kill Kendra. They met several times and came up with various plans. The initial idea was to inject Kendra with illegal drugs or sedatives and then dispose of her. Brenda knew she needed a trustworthy accomplice to avoid suspicion, so she began the search. They drove through the rundown neighborhoods and asked several people for assistance. This is how they met Christ Ofer. He agreed to help and played a significant role in planning the details of the crime. The three of them decided together that the quickest way to kill her was to shoot her. During their collaboration, Crystal disclosed that September 2nd was intentionally selected. Brenda was aware that Kendra and Ricardo were planning a trip to Mexico, so they decided to eliminate her before the vacation. Brenda told Crystal she wanted the crime to appear as a failed robbery. Next, the criminals then selected the location for the murder. For days, they meticulously followed Kendra's movements, recording her every minute to ensure nothing altered for the chosen day. After her work hours, they tracked her path home and planned how to subtly access the apartment complex's secure parking garage. On September 1, 2015, they conducted a final check. On the morning of the crime, Brenda and Crystal picked up the Jeep from Jose and then picked up Christopher. Brenda was dropped off at the library in Caro Wilton to create an alibi, while Crystal and Christopher headed to Kendra's apartment complex. They waited across the street for about 30 minutes before driving to Kendra's workplace. After failing to follow her due to traffic, they went back to the house to wait. When Kendra arrived home, Christopher, wearing gloves, got out of the car, approached her with a gun, and shot her as she exited her vehicle. Crystal mentioned that she didn't witness the shooting but heard it. After that, she drove Christopher home, picked up her son from his grandmother, and later met Brenda at Jose's house to give him the Jeep. As a result, Brenda's dream was fulfilled. She was free from her despised rival and only needed to wait for a message from her beloved Ricardo. Brenda felt delighted that she had executed the perfect crime. Crystal's honest confession and testimony against Brenda clearly proved Brenda's guilt, leading to a swift issuance of an arrest warrant. However, when police went to arrest her, Brenda was not at home. As a dual citizen, she escaped to Mexico. Following her escape, her role in arranging a contract killing was revealed, and she was added to the wanted list. On April 6, 2016, the FBI added Brenda to their list of most wanted fugitives, offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to her capture. She was the only woman on the list at that time and the 9th woman ever to be included. Just 2 days later, Mexican authorities arrested her in Torreon, Coahuila. She was extradited to the United States on October 6 under the condition that she would not face the death penalty. Once in the U.S., she was charged with capital murder in Texas, and her trial began in 2017. During the court hearing, the families of Kendra and Ricardo openly shared their feelings. Witnesses verified Brenda's harmful obsession with her ex-lover and her intentions. In court, Brenda's cousin Moses Martinez discussed his sister's depression following her breakup with Ricardo. He also disclosed that Brenda had offered him money to attack Kendra with a baseball bat, a proposal he declined. At the trial, Jennifer Escobar, Brenda's friend, testified that Brenda was obsessed with Ricardo. She recounted that Brenda would read all his emails and track his movements through his phone. Jennifer informed the jury that Brenda had a copy of his house key and access to his bank accounts. She also revealed that Brenda asked for her help to get rid of the hated Kendra, suggesting methods like injecting something lethal or using a bat to put her in a coma. Brenda offered Jennifer $2,000, a car, and illegal drugs in exchange for her help. Jennifer talked about this offer with her parents and decided to refuse it. It's odd that, when presented with the suggestion to harm or kill someone, but no one reported this threat to the police. Brenda's obsession was highlighted through evidence presented by several associates in court. It was found that Brenda had a motive to want Kendra dead, seeing H. or as a barrier to reuniting with Ricardo. Evidence revealed that Brenda's obsession grew significantly in the months before Kendra's death. During the hearing, an ATM withdrawal receipt for $500 was presented, which Brenda gave to Crystal as payment for her involvement. Christopher received a cash payment of $600. Cell phone records showed that Brenda, Crystal, and Christopher were together before the crime. Moreover, there were over 99 calls recorded between Brenda and Crystal from August 22 to September 4, demonstrating their constant communication to plan the murder of Kendra. The defendant's attorney attempted to place most of the blame on the actual perpetrators, but this strategy was unsuccessful. The defense claimed that Brenda was not present at the crime scene, offering an alibi and receipts showing she was at a restaurant when the crime occurred. Although Brenda did not plead guilty, the jury disagreed with her defense. Brenda was found guilty of murdering Kendra, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole after just 30 minutes of deliberation. Christopher, who directly committed the murder, admitted his guilt and was sentenced to death. Crystal cooperated with the investigation and pleaded guilty, which resulted in her receiving a 35-year prison sentence with the possibility of parole. Kendra Hatcher's family expressed satisfaction with the court's decision and quietly left the courtroom after the verdict. On the other hand, the Delgado family never believed Brenda could be involved, as they knew her as a loving daughter and a woman with solid family values and Christian principles. In conclusion, the tragic case of Kendra Hatcher underscores the devastating consequences of unchecked jealousy and obsession. Brenda Delgado's relentless pursuit to reclaim her past love led to a senseless crime that ended a life full of promise. The investigation revealed the intricate and disturbing lengths to which Brenda went to orchestrate Kendra's murder, revealing a dark side that was hidden beneath a facade of normalcy. The verdict delivered justice for Kendra and her family, but it also serves as a stark reminder of the profound impact that personal vendettas can have when they spiral out of control. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lisa Holm. Lisa Holm was born on February 7, 1998 in a small town in Sweden. It is a peaceful place where she lives with her parents and older sister. Lisa is a kind, positive, and determined person. Even before finishing her studies, she decided that she wanted to go to Australia to study architecture. Lisa has also had a lot of experience traveling with her family, visiting many other countries. In the summer of 2015, when Lisa turned 17, she finally found her first job at a cafe about a 40-minute drive from home. During the first few weeks, her parents still drove her to work. However, not long after, her father decided to buy her a scooter so that she could get around on her own. Lisa had this type of driver's license before she turned 18, which is the age required to apply for a car driver's license. She was very happy to receive this gift because it was an opportunity for her to go to work by herself without having to rely on others. However, in the first few weeks, her father still accompanied her by car because Lisa lacked experience driving on the road. She only worked on weekends, and her father accompanied her every morning and evening. This habit continued until June 7th, when he finally allowed her to drive herself to the cafe. Around lunchtime, her parents decided to visit her at work and have lunch together. That day, the cafe was quite crowded, so Lisa was very busy with work. She took a short break to have lunch with her parents, then they returned home. At 6:23 p.m., Lisa sent a text message to her father saying that she was coming home. Just 3 minutes later, her father received a call from Lisa, but no one answered. He heard some voices in the background and thought that Lisa had accidentally called his number while talking to her colleague. He also heard the sound of a car door closing. He called Lisa's name several times, but no one answered. Then, he ended the call and started waiting for her to come home. However, she did not appear. After an hour, Lisa's parents began to worry. They thought something might have happened to her on the way since she should have arrived by now. This was the first time she had ridden a scooter alone, and her father was very concerned about her safety. He tried calling her several times, but Lisa's phone was turned off. After waiting for a while, her father decided to set off, hoping to meet Lisa on the way because she could have taken the shortest route. Her father was afraid that Lisa might have had an accident, so he drove carefully, paying attention to the road but did not see his daughter. Finally, he went to the cafe but could not find Lisa. When he arrived at her workplace, he noticed that Lisa's scooter was parked in front of the building. At that moment, he panicked because he could not find his daughter despite having come all this way. When he saw her scooter, he immediately calmed down, thinking that maybe she was just late for work for some reason. However, there was no one in the cafe, and he noticed something else. Lisa's scooter key was still in the ignition, with a helmet dangling from the handle. These things made him believe that something was wrong with his daughter. She would never leave the key in the scooter while leaving it unattended in the parking lot. Meanwhile, Lisa's mother contacted the cafe owner, hoping to find clues about her daughter's whereabouts. However, the cafe owner claimed that he did not know where Lisa was. According to the cafe owner, Lisa had called the staff around 6 p.m. and they told her that they were closing the cafe. After the call from Lisa's mother, the cafe owner immediately got in his car and went to the cafe. On the way, the cafe owner also contacted 4 friends who lived nearby, asking them to help find Lisa. When the cafe owner arrived, they began searching both the cafe and the surrounding area. They hoped that Lisa might have decided to take the bus instead of the scooter. Lisa's mother and sister drove to the bus station in their town to check the schedule. Unfortunately, Lisa was not on the bus. Her family immediately contacted the police. It was dark. The police quickly expanded the search. The fact that Lisa's motorbike was left in the parking lot with the keys made them consider the possibility that Lisa had been kidnapped. Such incidents are quite rare in Sweden, especially in the remote rural area where she lived. Therefore, the police quickly mobilized teams with sniffer dogs, while other officers began knocking on doors near the cafe. When Lisa's classmates and friends learned about her missing, they shared information about the case on social media, hoping to attract more attention and find witnesses. The search went on all night but yielded no results. On Monday morning, the police department announced Lisa's missing to the public and asked anyone with information to come forward. At the same time, a man working in a warehouse across the street from the cafe found a motorcycle glove on the floor and reported it to the police. Detectives had checked the warehouse the night Lisa went missing but did not find the glove. They later showed the glove to Lisa's parents, who confirmed that it belonged to their daughter. This further strengthened the theory that Lisa had been kidnapped, and the police intensified their search efforts. By that time, news of Lisa's missing had captured the nation's attention, and hundreds of volunteers had joined the search. On Tuesday, the police received some alarming new leads. Volunteers searched the area around a dirt road a few hundred yards from the cafe. During the investigation of the crime scene, investigators collected several pieces of evidence related to Lisa, including a phone case, a receipt, a ticket, and a broken smartphone screen. They later found other parts of the smartphone, Lisa's ID card, and several other receipts scattered along the dirt road. This evidence made the police almost certain that Lisa had been kidnapped. They mobilized every available resource for the search, and the number of participants grew. The case became a major news topic in Sweden, and hundreds of volunteers from across the country joined the search. A local missing persons organization also joined the effort. The scale of the search for Lisa became the largest in the country's modern history, with more than 1,000 people involved in total. The police received numerous calls from people with information about Lisa's missing. One woman reported that before Lisa went missing, she had gone jogging. While she was jogging, a man standing next to his car stopped her and asked for directions to a city she had never heard of. He spoke to her in English. She tried to give him directions using Google Maps, but he asked her to get in his car and show him the way using his navigation device. The woman found this request suspicious, so she refused and continued walking. She also told the police that she believed she had seen the man among the workers repairing a warehouse across from the cafe. Lisa's co-workers shared a testimony with the police. On the day of her missing, a witness noticed two men standing across from the coffee shop, looking in the direction of where she worked. The witness didn't think much of it at the time, but after Lisa went missing, they decided to share it with the police. The next day, Wednesday, Lisa's father and some friends searched the dirt road where her belongings had been found the day before. When they went a little further, they found Lisa's driver's license and house keys. This suggested that Lisa may have been abducted and forced to leave the coffee shop via this road. Her kidnapper may have thrown her belongings out of the car or other vehicle they used to abduct her. Police and volunteers focused their efforts in this area, but no other items were found. That evening, a friend of Lisa's father was returning home from his search. As he passed the coffee shop, he noticed that the police had left the warehouse where Lisa's gloves were found. The man decided to go inside the coffee shop to look for any other clues. This time, he used his car's flashlight to walk around the premises since it was dark. While there, he noticed a shiny object lying on the floor. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was a pair of women's earrings. The man later reported this to the police, who showed the earrings to Lisa's parents. They confirmed that the jewelry belonged to their daughter. The police then sealed off the shed and conducted a more thorough inspection. The lead detective explained that on the first day of the search for Lisa, the priority was to find her, so the shed had not been fully inspected, and they may have missed small items such as earrings. After conducting an in-depth investigation, forensic experts and sniffer dogs were called in. They discovered a remarkable piece of evidence hidden behind a wall, which was traces of human feces. Although it seemed unrelated to the case, forensic experts developed an hypothesis regarding it. When criminals commit serious and horrifying crimes, their bodies secrete a large amount of adrenaline, which can lead them to be unable to control their urge to urinate. This often happens to murderers, who frequently urinate before or during the crime. Based on the discovery of Lisa's gloves and earrings in the warehouse area, the police hypothesized that if she had been kidnapped, the perpetrator might have dragged her into this building. Therefore, detectives did not rule out the possibility that the kidnapper may have consumed a large amount of adrenaline, leading to an inability to control himself and necessitating urination at the scene. Consequently, fecal samples were taken and sent for DNA analysis. On Friday, the search area was expanded, and volunteers went to a farm about 3.2 kilometers from the cafe. This farm complex consisted of large buildings where many people worked. The search team decided to check the entire area. However, after they arrived, two men appeared at the farm. They spoke no Swedish and only communicated in English. One of them claimed that the police had come to the farm to check on them. But the leader of the search party did not believe him, as he thought he would be notified if it were true. So he decided to continue searching. The two men walked around the farm, observing for a while before driving away. After about an hour, the search team discovered a pile of branches behind the cowshed. Upon closer inspection, they found a motorcycle helmet, jacket, and headphones. Police quickly arrived on the scene and confirmed that these items belonged to Lisa. They then sent forensic experts to the farm to conduct a more thorough investigation. The detectives heard stories about two strange men who tried to stop volunteers from checking the farm. The police also recalled a report about a woman who had encountered a man acting suspiciously while jogging and who spoke English. In fact, they had some idea of his identity from the very beginning of the search. They visited the houses surrounding the cafe. In one of the houses, two Lithuanian brothers lived with the wife of one of them. All three of them spoke no Swedish and communicated only in English. They were the only people within a few miles who did not speak the local language. The police also had other indirect reasons to suspect them. The brothers worked at the warehouse across the street from the cafe and at the farm where Lisa's helmet was found. They were familiar with these locations and the road leading to their house. Since there were no other suspects, the police decided to question all three of them. Forensic experts, along with volunteers, went to the farm to continue the investigation. They noticed an old trailer, surrounded by tall grass, that looked like it hadn't been used in years. However, the grass around the door was flattened, indicating that something had been there recently. In addition, the grass under the door was also matted down, indicating that the door had not been opened for a long time. When the forensic experts opened the door, they were immediately hit by a strong stench of decay. Inside the trailer were several wardrobes, most of which had previously been used as changing rooms for workers. All but one were locked, leading experts to suspect that Lisa's body might be in one of them. They began opening each one and eventually discovered Lisa's body in an open cupboard, hidden behind a pile of old clothes and rags. Despite the small size of the cupboard, the perpetrator had managed to squeeze the victim inside. Lisa had been tied up with a rope around her neck and duct tape wrapped around her head. Her pants had been pulled down, and her shirt had been pulled up. Medical experts determined that Lisa had died from strangulation, but no signs of sexual assault were found. All of her clothes were turned over to the lab for testing. As news of the discovery of her body spread rapidly across the country, headlines in Sweden focused on Lisa's abduction. When her body was found and the public learned of her brutal murder, the incident shocked the entire nation. Since such crimes are extremely rare in Sweden, everyone was taken aback that someone could commit such a brutal act. On the same day her body was discovered, something unusual and quite strange happened. A YouTube user came across a video posted 13 days before the murder, titled 13, which had a countdown timer. The most disturbing detail was that the name of the channel that posted the video was Lisa. News of this video quickly spread across the media, leaving many people stunned by the coincidence. Some began to speculate that someone had predicted the murder, but the truth was much simpler. Someone had likely changed the channel name and video title after discovering Lisa's body. This could have been to suggest another conspiracy theory or just a cruel joke. The police are trying their best to quickly find the culprit in this murder. When Lisa's body was discovered, investigators brought in the owners of the farm, Nichole Rice, his brother and his brother's wife, for questioning. However, all of them denied any involvement in the case. They claimed that at the time of the kidnapping, they were at home together to provide each other with an alibi. According to their story, Nichole was sleeping in his room while his wife was preparing dinner and Nichole's brother was on the computer. Around 8 p.m., Nichole woke up and went to the gas station to buy pizza and cigarettes. The police had some doubts about the testimony of them, as they might have been protecting each other. Although the police collected their DNA samples, investigators still did not find direct evidence linking them to the murder case. Forensic experts worked diligently at relevant locations, such as the barn and the farm, using all available resources and manpower, and their efforts finally paid off. In the barn area, there was a small room resembling an office, with a large window overlooking the cafe. When examining this room, experts discovered 15 different male semen stains on the wall and floor near the window. This suggested that someone had stood there, observing the cafe staff, including Lisa. The collected semen samples were promptly sent to the laboratory, where experts extracted DNA profiles from these samples. The results of the DNA analysis showed that all 15 semen traces matched the DNA of Nichole. Additionally, fecal samples found in the barn also matched his DNA. In the adjacent room, which had previously been used to store cow's milk, forensic experts found a pipe about 2 feet above the floor, covered in a thick layer of dust except for a small strip. The size of the strip matched the rope used to strangle Lisa. Blood was found on the pipe, and DNA analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Nichole. On the floor near the pipe, they also found a piece of rope that matched the one on the pipe. Experts conducted tests and identified 2 DNA samples, Lisa's and Nichole's. This was an important step in the police investigation. They had connected the suspect to the rope used to kill the victim. Additionally, a strand of Lisa's hair was found in the room. Another crucial piece of evidence was Nichole's DNA found on her jacket. Based on this evidence, the police believed that Lisa had been murdered there. Police pieced together a similar sequence of events. Nichole had been observing the cafe for some time, and when Lisa was alone in the parking lot, he approached her. Based on the jogger's account, he may have pretended to ask Lisa for directions to a certain city or used some other tactic to trick her. Nichole may have then lured Lisa into his car to enter a route into the GPS system. Since Lisa was a kind person who always tried to help others, she may have agreed. Once she was in the car, the perpetrator covered her mouth and drove to a secluded place. At the scene, the perpetrator tied a rope around the victim's neck and hung her from a pipe. According to doctors, this action may have excited the perpetrator so much that he experienced an adrenaline rush, causing him to defecate on the spot. After the victim died, he placed Lisa's body in his car and drove to the farm, throwing her belongings out the window on the way. He hid the victim's body in the trailer's storage locker and covered it with old clothes. The entire process took less than an hour. Despite the overwhelming evidence, he maintained his innocence. His wife and brother were not involved and were released. They quickly left Sweden and returned to Lithuania. Preparations for the trial were intense. Neregis claimed that he had worked in that warehouse for a long time, so his DNA could have been present due to his work. Additionally, he had alibis from his wife and brother, although there were doubts about the reliability of both sources in court. This could work in his favor, although many uncertainties remained. However, the presence of Neregis's DNA on the victim's clothes could only be explained by his direct contact with her on the day of the murder. Furthermore, the police also found a witness who saw Neregis's car near the cafe just before and after Lisa's abduction. According to the witness, the car had traveled several times on the road between the cafe and the farm at a time when Neregis was believed to be asleep at home, according to his brother and his wife. After months of investigation, experts used the most advanced equipment to examine all the collected evidence. They found traces of Neregis's DNA on most of Lisa's clothing, including inside her underwear. With public interest piqued, the investigators continued to search for more clues that could influence the proceedings and strengthen Neregis's connection to the case. They traveled to Lithuania to speak with his wife and his brother again. The woman maintained that he had not left the house between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m., but when his brother was questioned, the detectives quickly obtained the information they wanted. After presenting the man with all the evidence against his brother and the details of what he had done to the 17-year-old girl, the man decided to cooperate with the police. He claimed that Neregis was not home that night, returning only around 7:30 p.m. He looked dirty and immediately washed all his clothes. As the police began questioning all the residents and visiting their homes, Neregis whispered to his brother to tell the police that he had been home during that time. Neregis later explained that he was afraid of being charged with a crime he did not commit, as he was an immigrant and had no alibi at the time of the abduction. The brother truly believed his cousin was innocent, but after hearing all the evidence, he realized that his initial thoughts might have been incorrect. Lisa's funeral took place just a month after her murder. The church where the funeral was held could only accommodate 130 people, but many more came to say goodbye to her. The organizers decided to set up extra chairs and screens outside so that everyone could watch the ceremony. The trial began 4 months after the murder and once again attracted national attention, placing everyone involved under a great deal of pressure. Neregis's lawyer claimed that his client's DNA could have been found on the victim's clothes because he had worked in the barn. However, the prosecutor argued that this explanation did not make sense, especially concerning Lisa's underwear. The only way the suspect's DNA could have ended up there would be if he had touched the victim's underwear. The lawyer was unable to produce any concrete evidence to prove his client's innocence. Instead, he theorized that the real killer was Neregis's brother. According to this theory, the brother took multiple samples of Neregis's DNA and deliberately left them on the victim's body and at the crime scene to confuse the case. But this defense was quickly dismissed. The trial lasted a month, and Neregis was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in a high-security prison. Although in Sweden, this prison offers the same amenities as a 3-star hotel. The lawyer appealed but was rejected. In early 2017, Neregis himself applied to be transferred to a prison in his home country of Lithuania for reasons that remain unclear. Lithuanian prisons are significantly worse than those in Sweden. Yet the court still accepted the defendant's request. After all, providing comfortable conditions of detention cost Swedish taxpayers hundreds of dollars per day per prisoner. That same year, Neregis appealed to the Lithuanian court, and his sentence was reduced from life to 15 years. However, his joy was short-lived. A few weeks later, the court overturned the decision, and Neregis was once again sentenced to life in prison, with no chance of returning to a comfortable cell in Sweden. 5 years later, in August 2022, Neregis was transferred to a prison in Lithuania. While other prisoners were being moved to another ward, one of them attacked and seriously injured Nichole, leading to his death on the way to the hospital. As for the suspect's wife, her involvement in the case has not been completely ruled out. The police stressed that it was almost impossible for her to be directly involved in the kidnapping or murder. If that were the case, experts would have found her DNA on the victim's clothes or belongings. However, it cannot be ruled out that she knew about Nichole's crime and tried to help him escape punishment by providing a false alibi. Nichole's brother also raised questions. Cafe employees reported seeing two men standing near the barn and watching them. Assuming that one of them was Nichole himself, the other man could have been his brother. However, the man's DNA was not found in the barn or on Lisa's clothes, making it unlikely that he was involved in the murder. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Nancy Lagerquist. Nancy Lagerquist, an 87-year-old woman, was a resident at the Riverside Healthcare Center, where she had lived since 1988. She was born in 1902 in Hamilton, Montana, and she spent much of her life working as an executive secretary. She was also an active member of the Missoula Business and Professional Women's Club before her retirement. She remained single for her entire life and did not have any children. When she passed away, she also did not have many relatives. On July 1, 1990, Nancy was seen sleeping in her bed by a care worker at 3:30 a.m. 1 hour later, at 4:30 a.m., the care worker checked on her room again but found her missing. This caused alarm and prompted 5 staff members on the shift to conduct a search. Despite their efforts, Nancy was nowhere to be found. At 4:41 a.m., the police were notified about her disappearance. It is worth noting that Nancy required around-the-clock assistance as she was unable to walk. Before her disappearance, she had been living an ordinary life at the care home, with nothing in her background suggesting she was at risk. Law enforcement and search and rescue teams arrived quickly at the scene. They searched the home and the surrounding area thoroughly. Since the home was located along the Clark Fork River, police officers in boats also searched the water. At 6:30 a.m., they stopped searching. Authorities found Nancy's body near the riverbank, about 30 minutes downstream from Riverside. She was the victim of a brutal murder involving sexual assault. Afterward, her body was thrown into the water. 2 investigators working on the case quickly realized the enormity of the challenge ahead. The discovery of Nancy's body in the water resulted in the destruction of any forensic evidence. Additionally, several key pieces of evidence, including Nancy's missing diaper and the possible murder weapon, were never found, leaving the police with unanswered questions. Detectives theorized that the perpetrator entered and exited Nancy's room through the window facing the river. To do this, they cut the window screen, but left no evidence on the window, windowsill, or anywhere else in the room. It is also puzzling that none of the home's alarm systems were triggered during the entry, and further checks revealed that all alarms were working properly at the time. A key witness reported seeing a man near the crime scene around 4 a.m. He walked through the parking lot of the Missoula Athletic Club, moving away from the river toward East Broadway Street. This individual was approximately 30 to 40 years old, 180 to 200 pounds, and had distinct physical features, including light brown collar-length hair, a mustache, and brown-rimmed glasses. He wore an untucked, striped white and brown t-shirt, which was longer at the back, along with tan shorts and white tennis shoes. The man was not considered a suspect in the case, but the police did want to question him. Nancy had very few relatives, so investigators quickly dismissed a family-related motive for the murder. They shifted their focus to the care home staff. Considering that a staff member would be familiar with the layout and security measures of the facility, leading them to suspect that the murder could be an inside job. This led authorities to concentrate on a particular male staff member. He was eventually cleared, but he left the care home less than a month later for unclear reasons. The police investigation shifted from focusing on a staff member to the possibility of an outside perpetrator. They observed that the home's security measures concentrated on the doors rather than the windows, leading them to speculate that the victim, Nancy, might have been targeted simply because her room faced the river, with no specific motive for the attack. During the investigation, a man named James Bailey was interviewed multiple times, but was eventually cleared as a suspect. Detectives have been reviewing witness statements to look for any other suspicious deaths at the nursing home. Their attention was drawn to the case of 86-year-old Bertha Scott, an Alzheimer's patient who passed away in her bed on May 2, 1990. At the time, her death was attributed to natural causes, as she had heart disease and was frequently restrained at night to prevent her from wandering. However, one nurse reported an unusual detail, a bruise on Bertha's neck, which they found suspicious. Bertha died and was buried without an autopsy being performed. Around the time of her death, staff members at her care home noticed some minor tampering with the windows in the physical therapy room. Based on a nurse's comments, the police decided to exhume Bertha's body to re-examine her cause of death. The police later revealed to her family that she had been raped, then she being strangled to death, leaving them in shock. Bertha's life is very different from Nancy's. Born in Pennsylvania in 1904, and Bertha married 20 years later. 2 years before her death, she moved to Missoula to be closer to her children. Although 4 of her 6 children had passed away before her, she left behind numerous grandchildren. During the medical examination of Bertha's body, semen was found, and the sample was collected. Unfortunately, the sample was too degraded to produce a DNA profile, therefore was unable to help the police identify her killer. Both cases eventually came to a dead end. In 1992, authorities investigated a suspect who was guilty of sexually assaulting a nursing home resident, but he had an alibi since he was in prison during the murders. The same year, Lloyd Chase Allen was also identified as a suspect, but he too was incarcerated at the time. In 2002, the Missoulian reported that several residents of the care home described a mysterious man who would walk the halls at night. There are concerns about the accuracy of the information provided by these residents, so it's difficult to determine whether this man actually existed. As a result, it is that additional unsolved cases exist. Without DNA evidence or further investigation, a resolution to this case seems unlikely. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sarah Stops Pretty Places. Sarah Stops Pretty Places was born on August 14, 2001. She grew up in a large family and was a member of the Crow and North Cheyenne Native American reservations in Montana. As a teenager, she was an exceptional athlete, enjoying various sports including basketball, football, running, cross-country, and wrestling. She also had a passion for the arts, performing in plays and singing in her high school choir at Hardin High School. Sarah is a kind and compassionate person, always caring and understanding to those she comes into contact with. In her free time, she often cared for stray animals. Her lifelong dream was to become a performer, aspiring to act and sing, with a bright future ahead of her. However, her life was tragically cut short shortly after she turned 18. Sarah was last seen in the rural town of Hardin, near the Crow Reservation, on August 24, 2019. She lives with her grandmother, who is named Yolanda Frazier. People did not know where she went, but it was clear that she did not return home. Sarah planned to meet her mother the following day for a trip to North Dakota but failed to appear. Her family began to worry when Sarah no responding to texts, didn't answer calls, and was inactive on social media. This was unusual for her, raising concerns that something was amiss. Sarah's aunt, Priscilla Bulltail, went to the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office to report Sarah's niece missing. However, the office told her that she would have to wait a while before filing a report. This information proved to be false. In Montana, because Keziah was under 21 and considered a minor, police were required to conduct an immediate search. Despite this, it wasn't until August 27 that the missing persons report was finally allowed to be filed by Keziah's family. Keziah's family felt that the police did not take her disappearance seriously, they failing to conduct a search and failing to distribute flyers after she went missing. When she went missing, police initially told Priscilla that Keziah was probably just out with friends. Keziah had previously struggled with alcohol issues, most notably when she was found unresponsive at school in 2019 due to intoxication and required emergency medical help. After her disappearance, her family waited anxiously for any information about her whereabouts. It wasn't until 5 days later, on August 29th, that a jogger stumbled upon Keziah's body near a wood pile in a backyard at the intersection of Mitchell Avenue and Rangeview Drive in the Hardin suburb, the same area where she was last seen alive. Notably, the homeowner, who had no connection to Keziah, was away at the time of the discovery. Keziah's family was not immediately notified that a body had been found, and instead, they learned about the information through social media rumors. As the news spread, they became extremely concerned. Priscilla attempted to visit the scene to identify the body, but was denied access and she couldn't tell if it was Keziah or not. Local news outlets were also not alerted to the discovery of the body. Keziah's mother and Yolanda visited the local mortuary on September 1st to identify a body, but they were initially told it was not Keziah's. As a result, the family continued their search for her. It wasn't until 10 days later that the body was confirmed to be Keziah's. The coroner concluded that she died on August 26th and that her death was suspicious, requiring further investigation. However, due to the advanced decomposition of her remains, the exact cause of her death could not be determined. It was also not possible to rule out asphyxiation as a cause of death. Following Keziah's body discovery, her family urged law enforcement to investigate her death. However, the family soon encountered resistance from Terry Bullis, the county coroner and owned the local funeral home Bullis Mortuary. Terry informed Keziah's mother, Geraldine, on September 12th, that her daughter's remains would have to be cremated in order for them to be returned to the family. This went against the family's cultural beliefs and also meant that no further examinations of the body would be possible. Moreover, the family had chosen the Dahl Funeral Home to handle the funeral arrangements, but Terry forced them to use his business, Bullis Mortuary Funeral Home. To the family's dismay, Keziah was cremated before her other relatives could even arrive in Hardin. On September 14th, the family located the site where Keziah's body was discovered with the help of nearby relatives. A few days earlier, they had tried to visit the area, but were unable to, as the scene was no longer cordoned off and there were no boundaries to where the body was discovered. They met Jason Cummings, the neighbor who had found Keziah's body. He told them that he had suggested to the police to charge her phone so they could contact the family. Unfortunately, it seemed the police had ignored his suggestion. Jason also questioned the authorities for not sealing off the crime scene, causing evidence to be destroyed. 5 days after Keziah went missing, on September 19th, her family contacted the media to raise awareness about the case. However, they were surprised to discover that local news outlets, including the Billings Gazette, were unaware of the situation. The Gazette said it called the sheriff's office daily for updates on the cases, but they were not notified about Keziah's case. On the same day, Keziah's mother, Geraldine, along with Keziah's father, Alan, met with Captain Mike Fuss from the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office. They questioned Captain Fuss about why he had not contacted them or returned their calls. Captain Mike explained that he had been preoccupied with other cases. When asked why the crime scene had not been sealed off, Captain Mike stated that according to protocol, if investigators arrived at the scene before uniformed officers, sealing off the scene was not necessary. However, if officers arrived first, the scene would be sealed off. Geraldine and Alan also inquired about Kaysira's phone, asking why law enforcement had not charged it to examine her recent communications. Captain Mike seemed surprised that the family knew about this detail and explained that the battery was dead, so they did not attempt to use it. However, Kaysira's family countered that the authorities could have charged the phone to access for recent activity. They initially claimed that not even the FBI could gain access to the phone's contents. Captain Mike reported that Kaysira had apparently died from alcohol poisoning. However, her family's offer of a $5,000 reward for any information about her death. Mike's response was unexpected and surprising, revealing a clear expression of anger. Additionally, Mike revealed that the original investigator, Jeremy Middlestead, had resigned from the case, citing that he couldn't handle it. A number of new developments occurred during this time. Kaysira's family was interviewed by law enforcement for the first time, and they also met with the Bighorn County Attorney, Jay Harris. Jay disclosed that the coroner, Terry Bullis, had a potential conflict of interest due to his roles as the owner of a funeral home business and the county medical examiner. Jay noted that under Terry's leadership, many deaths had been rapidly attributed to exposure to alcohol and natural causes. However, when the family sought answers to their questions, Jay was short-tempered and provided little clarity. On the 23rd, Kaysira's family received notice that her missing person report had not been filed and that her name was not in the missing persons database. A week later, the FBI declined to take the case, stating they required more evidence that Kaysira was murdered on the reservation. Notably, shortly before Kaysira's disappearance, she recorded a video of her 15-year-old wheelchair-bound younger brother being beaten by several police officers and shared it on social media. The incident involved deputies from the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office, resulting in disciplinary actions against the officers involved. However, one of the policemen present at the scene where Kaysira's body was found was said to be a policeman involved in the beating. This has raised suspicions that the police involved in Kaysira's death chose not to investigate, possibly to retaliate against her for her attempts to hold them responsible for her actions. 2 years after Kaysira's death, new information surfaced in August 2021. 4 witnesses came forward with accounts of the incident that led to her death. Their statements are not entirely consistent, but they generally agree on what happened. The witnesses reported that an argument took place outside a house on Rangeview Drive around 3 a.m. on August 26, 2019. Kaysira was involved in the argument with 3 other individuals, a 17-year-old girl, a 19-year-old woman, and a 23-year-old man. It was claimed that Kaysira had been at the house earlier, and one of the occupants had bought her alcohol. At the time of her death, her blood alcohol level was 0.149. The argument prompted a nearby resident to set off their car alarm, hoping the noise would cause the group to leave. And the group dispersed in different directions. Kaysira was last seen heading towards the area where her body was later found. Additional information was also revealed in the new report. Forensic analysis found no foreign DNA under Kaysira's fingernails. Furthermore, it was discovered that Kaysira had been diagnosed with asthma shortly before her disappearance. The case remains unsolved, and the authorities are still seeking information. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Frank Spencer. Frank Spencer was born on November 10, 1965, in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. His father was Cyrus, and his mother was Melina Spencer. Since childhood, Frank loved active games and sports, which helped him maintain a healthy body and mind. When he was in high school, he demonstrated his special ability on the wrestling team and was recognized as an excellent member. Frank had a strong ambition in business and wanted to continue the family business. So, after graduating from high school in 1984, he attended a local university and completed his course in 1988. After his father passed away, Frank became the owner of Spencer's Auto Parts. The year 1997 marked an important event in Frank's life. It was the year he met Maria. The two of them were attracted to each other at first sight. Maria was known for her hot temper and daring personality, which intrigued Frank. Frank's friend Paul remembered that Frank had always liked strong and wild people, and he was a bit like that too. When Frank and Maria met, they had a great start. However, not everyone was happy with the relationship. Maria's parents, in particular, had mixed opinions about Frank. They believed that Frank was not the right man for their daughter. Furthermore, there were rumors that Frank's father had been involved in a gang and was even a hired criminal. Maria's father did not have a good impression of Frank. He even tried to prevent their marriage for a while. Frank's family was also not happy with Frank's choice. So, Frank and Maria decided to run away and rent a separate apartment to get away from their families. After a while, Frank's family and Maria's family were forced to accept their relationship. Family life gradually returned to normal. Maria and Frank got married and had 2 children, a boy and a girl. They then moved to a new house. During this time, Frank owned an auto parts business and sponsored race cars. He worked hard to provide his family with everything they needed. For Frank, his children were the top priority and driving force in his life. Maria initially tried to manage the housework and take care of the children. However, later, despite having a law degree, she became the coach of her daughter's soccer team. Her friends said that, unlike her husband, she was not really interested in the marriage. She seemed to be uninterested in work and family responsibilities. What worried her most was the financial issue. She liked to spend what Frank earned. Maria Spencer had a cold personality, especially towards the children. This caused many problems in her marriage. Her husband was frustrated with her selfishness and eccentricity and expected her to change when she became a mother. However, Maria remained her own person. In 2006, her husband decided to file for divorce because he could no longer stand her inappropriate behavior and constant scandals. He feared for the health of the children because of her unreasonable behavior. After the divorce, the relationship between the two became even more strained. A confrontation over custody was inevitable. Maria wanted to keep the children with her, but her husband did not trust her and believed that she could not take good care of them. However, not everyone agreed with her husband's views. For example, her husband's friend, Ron, believed that both parents were necessary for the children to develop normally. Frank's friend advised him to negotiate with Maria for custody of the children. However, Frank thought he knew better than his friends and continued to demand sole custody. Maria did the same. She also hoped to receive a substantial amount of child support. The conflict between Frank and Maria worsened over time. On several occasions, due to Maria's erratic behavior, Frank had to call the police for help. Maria repeatedly attacked Frank and the children, but not everyone believed this. In 2008, an incident occurred that confirmed Frank's accusations. After a fight with Maria near their children's school, Maria was arrested. The problem stemmed from Maria wanting to pick up her daughter. But Frank's relatives prevented her. The reason was that the two had made another agreement, but Maria changed her mind at the last minute. After the fight, Maria put the child in the car but forgot to fasten the seatbelt. When the police checked her car, they discovered that Maria's actions could endanger the life and health of the child. As a result, Maria got into trouble with the law. She was charged with disorderly conduct and child endangerment. In addition, Frank also accused Maria of stalking him, claiming that she had stalked him on multiple occasions. For this reason, Maria faced an additional charge. Maria could not be convicted of endangering the life of the child because the prosecution could not prove it. Therefore, the authorities decided to drop the charge in exchange for Maria's admission of guilt for disorderly conduct and stalking. Maria agreed and was fined $600. However, this event did not make Maria reconsider her behavior. Instead, she continued to act negatively. Frank's acquaintances and relatives increasingly heard complaints from him about Maria threatening and stalking him. Some of Maria's co-workers also said that she repeatedly mentioned that she hated Frank and was willing to harm him. For this reason, one of her co-workers nicknamed her Black Widow. Frank tried to stay calm and smooth over the rough edges, but Maria wouldn't stop. He kept trying to talk to her, but she wouldn't listen. Frank started recording every conflict so that he would have evidence in case something bad happened. He just wanted to live and work in peace, but Maria took it too far. In 2009, Frank tried to stay positive and eventually met a woman named Julie. However, Maria soon learned about his new relationship. According to Maria, she didn't care that Frank was dating Julie, but what bothered her was that Frank gave Julie access to the children. However, Frank thought that Maria was extremely jealous, and that was the cause of all the trouble. Maria then became very angry. In February 2009, she sent a voice message to Julie, warning her not to go near the children. However, the situation worsened when Maria's father was released from prison after serving 5 years for fraud. His reputation was already bad, and for Frank, this meant more trouble, as he knew Maria's father had a fierce temper. Many believed that Maria had inherited her fierce personality from her father. As Frank became pensive and anxious, his colleagues noticed it too. The first incident that happened after Maria's father Anthony was released was a robbery at Frank's office. Important documents that could affect Frank's divorce were stolen. The next day, Maria called Frank and hinted that she had found something interesting. Frank understood that she was referring to the stolen documents and advised her to return them. At the same time, he also reported the incident to the police. However, it was unsuccessful in proving that someone was involved in the incident. The detectives did not find any traces of the perpetrator. However, everyone suspected that Maria and her father were involved in the crime. The police also considered Maria a suspect. In the end, the investigation of the case was stopped. However, thanks to the intervention of the police, Maria returned the stolen documents to the owner. It is likely that these documents did not contain any important information that could be used in court. The situation between Frank and Maria continued to escalate. Frank's patience was at its limit after Maria repeatedly threatened him on social media. This was because Frank's children were still in contact with his new partner, Julie. Julie, on the other hand, remained calm and balanced, enjoying her time with Frank and his children. She tried not to interfere in Frank and Maria's complicated relationship. However, Frank was extremely angry that Maria had neglected her parental responsibilities. The arguments between the two continued until 2010. At that point, Frank sought the intervention of law enforcement. He asked the police to evaluate Maria's behavior. Despite the threats, Maria insisted that it was just her way of communicating and that she meant nothing reprehensible. Again, Maria's guilt could not be proven because her warnings were vague. In January 2010, a fire brought negativity to Frank. In a strange coincidence, before a romantic trip to the Caribbean islands that he had planned, a fire broke out at Frank's mother's house the night before the trip. Fortunately, no one was injured, but all the property was destroyed by fire and smoke. During this fire, witnesses reported seeing a car driven by Maria, accompanied by neighbors and friends, visiting the house at that time. Maria smiled and watched the fire before leaving. After the fire department put out the fire, a dog owned by one of Frank's children was found dead in the fire. Maria's actions crossed the line, forcing the police to investigate the incident. Unfortunately, there was no clear evidence of arson at the time, and the fire was ruled an accident. Maria then sent Frank a frantic text message, gloating about how karma had caught up with him and how her life had been ruined. She hinted that Frank could face more consequences in the future. Maria also began sending similar messages to Julie, Frank's new partner. When the police failed to act, Maria's aggression escalated. She became so dangerous that she openly threatened Frank and Julie. A few months later, a fire broke out at Julie's house. This time, the situation could have been much worse. Julie was home when the fire broke out, but she was lucky to escape by jumping off the porch. Although she was uninjured, her house was severely damaged and uninhabitable. As a result, Frank invited Julie to move in with him. Frank and Julie feared that this would only make Maria angrier, but they had no other choice. The police are investigating the exact cause of the fire. A similar situation in the past suggests that the fire may have been intentionally set by an individual. Frank and Julie live in a different district than the burned street, so they hope that the police will conduct a fair and impartial investigation. However, once again, there is not much they can do due to the lack of concrete evidence. However, the investigators did not give up. Julie hired private investigators to join the investigation, which pushed the inquiry in a new direction. During the inspection, 2 flares were found on the lawn. One was broken and lying nearby. Investigators also discovered that the fire had spread from the steps leading to the balcony of the house. Finally, after collecting and examining the data, experts determined that the cause of the fire was arson. However, the lack of direct evidence has prevented authorities from identifying the perpetrators. The suspects remain at large and have not been prosecuted for their crimes. The cold summer of 2012 marked a tragic event in the life of the Frank family. In June 2012, Frank and Julie decided to split up, but in reality, it was just a plan to distract Maria. However, this also marked the final farewell of the Frank family. Just a few weeks later, Frank was found dead. On July 3rd, Joe, a close friend of Frank's, decided to visit him because he had not heard from him for a while. Joe and Frank used to take their children out together, and their team was currently in an important series of matches. However, when Frank did not answer the phone, Joe decided to visit him in person. When he arrived at Frank's house, Joe became worried when he saw that the front door was slightly ajar and there were stains near it. His fear was confirmed when he entered the house and saw Frank lying motionless on the floor. Frank's face was serene, as if he had finally found the peace he had been looking for. However, when Joe walked around the body, he saw dried blood in Frank's ear. Without hesitation, Joe called emergency services. As news of the incident spread throughout the county, everyone knew that this was a terrible crime. However, the detectives had to take matters into their own hands to find out who was behind this murder. Investigators discovered many important signs at the crime scene. They found large pools of blood and drag marks on the floor, along with a clear shoe print and bloody gloves in the kitchen. This physical evidence was sent for analysis. The investigation results showed that the bloody shoe print matched the size of the gloves that Maria's father, Anthony, often wore. Furthermore, Maria's DNA was found on the gloves. Since Maria had not lived with the family for over a year, the presence of her DNA on the gloves was unlikely to have happened by accident. All the evidence pointed to the involvement of Anthony and Maria in the case. Both were subsequently arrested. Autopsy results and ballistics analysis revealed that Frank had been shot with 2 different weapons. The first bullet was fired from a .30 caliber sniper rifle as he stood by the front door. Forensic experts found a sniper nest about 115 feet from the house. The bullet went through Frank's arm and chest, causing severe and fatal injuries. The attackers dragged Frank into the house, where they fired a final shot into his head with a .357 Magnum revolver. Frank was already dead at that point. This action was considered an act of revenge, suggesting that the shooter harbored a grudge against the victim. Police speculated that Anthony shot Frank with the rifle. There were also some important clues left behind. Frank's car and dog were missing from the house, implicating Anthony and Maria. A review of traffic cameras showed Frank's car driving away from the victim's house shortly after the crime. However, the driver could not be identified. The car was later found in Sunbury, Pennsylvania, 27 miles from Frank's house and 5 miles from Maria's residence. However, no fingerprints or other evidence were found inside the car. Frank's dog was found 2 days after the crime when it wandered into a wedding in Dauphin. Thanks to an electronic chip, attendees realized that the dog had an owner. The dog was later returned to Frank's mother. The fact that Frank had purchased the dog after the fire helped shed some light on the case. During the investigation, detectives discovered that the criminals had taken the dog as they were fleeing the scene. During the time Anthony was stopped, the dog was attracted to the smell of food nearby and escaped. It then wandered into a house where a wedding was being held, where it was found. This helped detectives prove that Anthony's phone was near the venue of the celebration on the day of the crime, even though he claimed to be at home in Harrisburg, 12 miles away. It is possible that Maria was the one who put the dog in the car, but this decision proved to be a mistake. During questioning, Anthony admitted that Frank had asked him for help several times and that he had visited Frank the day before Frank died. This would explain the traces found at the crime scene. However, Anthony could not explain the presence of the pool of blood. His testimony sounded disingenuous. Anthony also confessed that Frank had given him the car to use that same day, apparently to justify his fingerprints at the victim's house. This would indicate that he had been at the crime scene the day before. Searches were conducted at Anthony and Maria's homes to find the murder weapon, but Anthony was a seasoned criminal and knew how to handle weapons. Therefore, neither the rifle nor the pistol was found. Maria also refused to admit her guilt. She assumed that the glove had been accidentally sent to her ex-husband's house, possibly because the children had moved it one day. Eventually, Anthony and Maria were released to go home. However, detectives continued to investigate and collect the evidence needed to solve the case. Meanwhile, Frank's friend Derek Reed tried to talk to Maria at a school football game. During the conversation, Maria confessed that the last thing her husband saw before he died was her face. This statement was strange and curious. The investigation into Frank's death received intense attention from the state attorney general. The Attorney General was furious with the indifference of the authorities to Frank's reports and statements. The police also faced numerous complaints of incompetence, and an internal investigation was inevitable. However, the police's negligence in their duties could not be proven. The reason was that much of the information provided by Frank, which the police believed lacked solid evidence, contributed to Frank's tragic death. The public and Frank's relatives were outraged that their petition had not yielded results. Meanwhile, investigators tried to prove the suspect's guilt not only in the crime but also in stalking and other crimes committed before. In 2013, a major interrogation was held. At the same time, Maria and Anthony continued to claim their innocence, denying all 12 charges against them. Their unwillingness to cooperate with the investigation led to charges of providing false testimony. Prosecutors argued that the suspects had arrived at Frank's home together, but they chose not to use their own vehicles to avoid attracting attention. Instead, they fled the scene in Frank's car. By the end of 2014, Maria was recaptured. Meanwhile, Anthony successfully escaped. After being interrogated one last time, Anthony boarded a plane and flew to Colombia. According to the investigation, Anthony's escape was evidence that he was hiding his guilt. For 11 months, Anthony was on the run but was eventually captured in Buenos Aires, Argentina. After being arrested by local police, he fought extradition to the United States but was unsuccessful and was deported back to his home country. In the fall of 2015, Maria's trial began. She continued to deny her guilt and blamed her father. She claimed that she loved Frank and never wanted him dead. However, multiple witnesses came forward to shed light on her true nature, recounting the threats, stalking, and sabotage she had committed. After more than a week of trial, the jury returned a verdict, finding her guilty on all counts, including murder, arson, burglary, perjury, conspiracy, and menacing. Maria was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 50 years. Witnesses reported that she smiled throughout the trial. Years later, Anthony's trial began. Anthony was furious when he heard his daughter's accusations. He claimed he was only helping her but objected to the use of violence. However, the physical evidence suggested otherwise. Finally, in the fall of 2018, Anthony was convicted of murder, robbery, and arson. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus 45 years. When he was sentenced, the 77-year-old blew a kiss to the prosecutor and the lead detective before cursing at the judge. Years later, Anthony sought to appeal, claiming his defense attorney was ineffective, which led to his conviction. His daughter, Maria, also tried to appeal her case. However, both Maria and Anthony's efforts were unsuccessful. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Turpin family. David Turpin was born on October 17, 1961, in Princeton, West Virginia, to Betty and James Turpin. David came from a devoutly religious family and had a relatively normal upbringing. During his high school years at Princeton High School, David participated in various activities, including Bible Club, Chess Club, Science Club, and a cappella choir. David enrolled at Virginia Tech University after graduating from high school to pursue a degree in electrical engineering in Blacksburg, Virginia. Thanks to his exceptional skills in computer engineering, David landed jobs at leading defense technology companies such as Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin. Louise Turpin was born on May 24, 1968, in Princeton, West Virginia. She is the eldest of 6 children of Wayne Robinette, a preacher, and Phyllis Robinette, who worked at Walmart and sang in the church choir. The Robinette children's home environment was tense due to frequent conflicts between their parents, which led to harsh treatment. Louise and her sisters were sexually abused by a family member as children. This traumatic experience was a secret kept within the family. According to Louise's younger sister, Elizabeth, Louise played a protective, gentle, kind, and nurturing role. She comforted her siblings during their parents' violent conflicts and protected them from abusive relatives. At the age of 15, Louise met 22-year-old David Turpin at church. They kept their relationship a secret for fear of Louise's parents' reaction. However, when the truth was discovered, Louise's mother Phyllis eventually accepted their relationship, partly because David came from a devout Christian family and Louise convinced her. David and Louise decided to keep their relationship a secret from her father, Wayne, knowing that he would be furious if he found out. In January 1985, 23-year-old David visited Louise's school, Princeton High School, where he had graduated 5 years earlier. He convinced the staff to let him take Louise out of class, and she left willingly with him. They began their journey south, planning to elope. When Louise's parents discovered she was missing, they called the police. Before the police could catch up with them, the couple headed to Texas, where they planned to secretly marry. However, when they were stopped, they agreed to return to West Virginia. When they returned home, Wayne and Phyllis's reactions were surprisingly calm. Initially, Wayne was angry with Phyllis for allowing their daughter, Louise, to date David. However, when he saw how much they loved each other, he realized that it would be difficult to separate them. So Wayne agreed to let them marry on February 11, 1985, in a small ceremony in Petersburg, Virginia. 2 years later, Louise's parents divorced and Louise's father, Wayne, took a job as the chief deputy assessor of Mercer County. After marrying David, Louise began to live more independently and freely. Louise was happy with her new life. In 1988, Louise gave birth to her first daughter, and 18 months later, their second child was born. David was then transferred to General Dynamics, and his family moved to Fort Worth, Texas. They settled in a modern neighborhood called Meadow Creek. Louise's family lived a lavish lifestyle thanks to David's high-paying job. Louise, eager to show off her family's newfound wealth, invited relatives from West Virginia to visit. Having grown up on a tight budget, Louise was happy to show off her current success. To make their visit comfortable, David and Louise paid all the expenses. The Louises welcomed a baby boy in 1991, bringing them even more joy. However, by 1992, the Louises were in debt. Despite their financial struggles, they continued to live a lavish lifestyle. In 1993, Louise became pregnant with her fourth child, a girl. In 1994, Louise's oldest daughter started first grade at Meadow Creek Elementary School. She looked neglected, with greasy, unkempt hair, dirty clothes, and poor hygiene. Her appearance made her the target of teasing by her classmates. In 1995, Louise's family welcomed a fifth child, a boy. Louise's family seemed carefree despite their financial difficulties and continued to splurge on luxuries, treating relatives to expensive meals. When Louise's younger sister Elizabeth joined them on their 1996 vacation in Fort Worth, they stopped at a casino in Louisiana on the way. While at the casino, Louise asked Elizabeth to babysit the children so she and David could gamble. They asked Elizabeth not to tell anyone about this, knowing that it was against their Christian values. During this visit, David and Louise's gambling led to losses. Tensions became apparent when David claimed that Louise had a serious gambling addiction and blamed Louise for their financial difficulties. While staying with Louise's family, Elizabeth was shocked by the family's disturbing behavior. David and Louise did not show much affection for their children and tightly controlled every aspect of their lives. Elizabeth was particularly concerned about David's behavior, as he often invaded Elizabeth's privacy by entering the bathroom while she was showering, making her feel uncomfortable and insecure. In May 1997, the Tuppins had their fifth child. By September of that year, concerns about their eldest daughter and the possible signs of sexual abuse began to grow. In 1998, the family had a sixth child. Although David had a well-paying job, the family's financial situation worsened due to their frequent gambling, which caused significant financial strain. In the spring of 1999, the eldest daughter dropped out of school, as did the other children. Louise and David announced that they were homeschooling their children. In late 1998, the bank foreclosed on the family's home in Fort Worth, so Louise and David moved to Rio Vista, Texas, a less populated area. The new home that Louise and David had in Rio Vista was in serious disrepair when they moved in. It was dirty, stained, and smelled bad. Before moving into the Rio Vista home, the Louises had their seventh child. Over the next 6 years, the family added 5 more children. Over time, the parents, David and Louise Turpin, became increasingly irresponsible and abusive. They physically harmed their children, beating, choking, and whipping them with belts, often for trivial reasons such as not letting them go to the bathroom. The children were also severely neglected in terms of personal hygiene, with some only bathing once a year. Despite purchasing nutritious food, David and Louise often withheld food from their children, forcing them to starve. The parents would tease their children by leaving uneaten meals in plain sight. Instead, the children were fed cheap frozen meals, resulting in severe malnutrition. This neglect was evident in the children's slow development, pale skin, and youthful appearances that did not match their actual ages. In 2004, Louise's family moved to a nicer trailer, leaving behind their old home in Rio Vista, which had become uninhabitable due to years of neglect, garbage accumulation, and rodent infestation. In 2008, Louise Turpin, then 40, had a shocking conversation with her sister Teresa. Louise revealed that she and her husband David had abandoned their Christian education and stopped attending church. Instead, they had become interested in Satanism and used Ouija boards. Louise also confessed that she and David had engaged in wife swapping, a lifestyle that involved having sex with other couples they met online. What was even more disturbing was that they often left their younger children at home, in the care of their older siblings, while they went out to meet strangers they had met online. This drastic change in Louise, who had always been caring and responsible, worried her older sister Teresa. Despite their financial struggles, Louise's family often went to Disneyland in matching outfits, taking lots of happy photos. Louise made sure to send these photos to her family and her parents. The only indication to Louise's family that the children were okay was through these photos, which showed them appearing happy despite being very thin. In 2014, Louise's family moved to Paris, California, about 20 miles north of Murrieta. By this time, the child abuse had reached an extremely violent level. David and Louise had tied their children to their beds with ropes. If the children tried to escape, the ropes were replaced with chains and locks. The children were locked in the room for around 20 hours a day, forced to endure the stench that permeated the air. In 2015, the family welcomed their 13th and final child. Soon after, the family traveled to Las Vegas to celebrate David and Louise's 30th wedding anniversary. Faced with the horrors of their living conditions, Louise and David's 17-year-old daughter made the brave decision to seek help by reporting the abuse to the police. She climbed out of the window and quickly called the police on the phone. During a tense 20-minute 911 call, she detailed the deplorable living conditions and the countless abuses she and her siblings endured. With photographs of their desperate situation as evidence, she waited for the police to arrive. When police arrived at the scene, they witnessed a horrifying scene: a severely malnourished girl who appeared to be about 10 years old. The girl led police to the front door, where they found Louise. Upon entering the home, police immediately smelled a strong stench that made it difficult to breathe. Despite the strong odor, police continued to investigate and made a horrifying discovery: 3 younger children chained to beds. The home was in a state of extreme disarray, with trash and dirt covering the floor because there was no toilet access. Police quickly took the younger children to Riverside University Medical Center for evaluation and care, while the older children were taken to Corona Regional Medical Center. David and Louise Turpin were arrested on January 14, 2018, for child abuse and torture. Within 4 days, they faced multiple charges. Each of them was charged with 12 counts of torture, 7 counts of abuse, 6 counts of child abuse and neglect, and 12 counts of false imprisonment. David Turpin also faces a separate charge of lewd conduct with a child under 14. Among their children, a 2-year-old child showed no obvious signs of abuse. In addition to being abused, the children were treated extremely cruelly by their parents. They suffered severe physical abuse that resulted in neurological damage. The children of Louise and David lacked basic life skills and knowledge. Although their parents, David and Louise Turpin, bought them toys, the children were not allowed to play with them. They were forced to stay up until the early hours of the morning, often until 4 or 5 a.m., and were not allowed to go to bed before that time. In 2018, the court took action against the Turpin parents. On January 24, the judge ordered that David and Louise have no contact with their children for 3 years and that all contact be through their attorney. On June 21st of the same year, the court decided that there was enough evidence against David and Louise to proceed to trial. The trial concluded on February 22, 2019. On that day, David and Louise Turpin pleaded guilty to 14 counts including torture, abuse, false imprisonment, and child endangerment. During the trial, David and Louise had an emotional reunion with their children. The children appeared to have forgiven their parents and were affectionate toward David and Louise. Each expressed a wish for their parents to be well and shared that their lives were going well. David and Louise sincerely apologized for their past actions and expressed their deep love for their children, wishing them success in life. David and Louise were subsequently sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. As of 2022, Louise, 53, and David, 60, are both eligible for parole in 2037. The severe abuse and neglect in their home shocked the community and beyond. The community came together to support the children, giving them hope and a new start in life.